I find his lack of balance disturbing.
It's all that data, bro. With SLT mega deals, he's got double data for the next 2 months.
Making headlines for First at 9, 14 years on. Victims of the 2004 tsunami remembered. Determination to oust Rajpaksha. MP Sumandiran says the Tamil community didn't vote for Sarath Fonseca and the current president out of love. Northern strife. Close to 87,000 people affected by inclement weather in the north. Trying times. Economist Dr. Indrajit Aponso on what to expect in the coming year.
The scenarios are such that the situation may escalate further.
මේ උත්සව සමයේ ස්මාර්ට් ඇන්ඩ්‍රොයිඩ් තාක්ෂණයෙන් එන සිංග විස්ටා TV එකක් මිලදී ගන්නා ඔබට හිත පිරෙන්න වාසි රැසක් ඕනෑම සිංග ප්‍රදර්ශනාගාරයකින්.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammika Kanayaka. Now, Sri Lanka today commemorated the disastrous tsunami which struck the island 14 years ago, which claimed over 30,000 lives. Numerous memorials were worked off in memory of those fallen victims from the 2004 tsunami. The total number of deaths caused by the disaster when factoring in other countries which were in its path exceeds 300,000. Here in Sri Lanka, National Safety Day was celebrated in commemorating the fallen near the Tsunami Memorial in Parali this morning. Tsunami was an alien word to many Sri Lankans until December 2004, despite it being a commonly used word in some parts of the Asian region. A 9.1 magnitude earthquake erupted in the seabed near the Sumatra island in Indonesia on the 26th of December of 2004, triggering a tsunami, causing damages to hundreds and thousands of lives. The tsunami waves from near Sumatra island struck Sri Lanka at a speed of 800 kilometers per hour at around 9:26 in the morning. Intense waves ripped through coastal areas of the island, claiming lives of more than 35,000 people, damaging property which amounts to billions. Sri Lankans commemorate their beloved who lost their lives due to the disaster each year on the 26th of December for 2 minutes from 9:26 in the morning. As usual, tsunami commemorations took place this morning near the Tsunami Memorial in Parali in memory of victims of the disaster. It was organised by the Disaster Management Centre. In such a backdrop, we at Derana, First at 9, contacted the Disaster Management Centre and questioned as to what technologies they're using to warn the general public of any possible repeats of the disaster.
Especially the Indonesian Tsunami Warning Centre and the Australian Tsunami Warning Centre and the National Tsunami Warning Centre of India as well, being connected with the Meteorological Department and the Disaster Management Centre. So they are providing us the information for the tsunami, especially if any earthquake occurred in that particular prone areas. They get identified technical buoys, and the information could be sent in 3 stations. The same information are sending from these 3 stations to the Meteorological Department as well as the Disaster Management Centre. 28 countries will be covered by that warning system internationally. So we are testing that warning every year, and the warning comes to the Met Department. They certify that particular warning and send to the Disaster Management Centre. We have a good early warning system, including the early warning towers and VHF, HF communications, satellite communications, and the media and the police and military communications, and a lot of other communications are linked for the early warning system up to the national level to the ground level. And a safer routes been identified and evacuation centers been prior identified.
In the meantime, First and I learned that preserved body parts of those whose lives were lost during the tsunami, kept at the Karapite Medical Faculty of the University of Ruhuna, will be handed over to the students to be used for academic purposes.
We tried our best to resurrect them to the previous state and were preserved and were actually demonstrated to the public in 2005, 2006 and 2007 for identification purposes, and then those were preserved. All those remains amount to nearly 135 still remain in the department, and we are in a position to hand over them if proper identification procedures want to be continued in the future. Further, I wish to request from the authorities, especially in the disaster management ministry and the district coordinating officers, to take a consideration about the existing tsunami burial places. Now we are in the 14th year, so most of the tsunami burial places which were on the government-owned lands in 2004 now being occupied by various personnels and the private sector companies. So these tsunami burial places are now running a risk of losing their identity and their existence, which is witnessed by us, especially in the Galle Kurunduwatta area and the Battapallu area as well.
Parliamentarian of the Tamil National Alliance, M.A. Sumandiran, makes the claim that it wasn't out of love that the Tamil community voted for Sarath Fonseca and the current president in respective elections. Addressing a commemoration ceremony of a late parliamentarian, M.A. Sumandiran pinpointed ousting then President Mahinda Rajapaksa from power as the prime conviction of the Tamil community. The 13th commemoration ceremony of late parliamentarian Joseph Pararajasingham was held in his native city Batticaloa yesterday. Pararajasingham was murdered on Christmas Eve of 2005 during a midnight mass at the St Mary's Church in Batticaloa. Public is now aware of the aspects of the constitution after the recent political developments in the country. We also got to know about the 19th Amendment. Although then-President Mahinda Rajapaksa didn't have the two-thirds majority in Parliament in 2010, he managed to buy votes of some parliamentarians to pass the 18th Amendment. During a recent meeting, the President said that he will never forget the Tamil community since it was because of their votes that he became the head of state. I then replied to him saying that the Tamil community voted for Field Marshal Sarath Fonseca in 2010, while in 2015 they voted for the current president. I clarified to the President that it was not because of any love towards Fonseca or him that the community cast their votes in both these presidential elections. The Tamil community cast their votes with the hope of ousting Mahinda Rajapaksa from power. That is why the Tamils will never accept the person they ousted as president being appointed as the Prime Minister of this country again. We put the views of MP Sumandiran to Executive Director of the Centre for Policy Alternatives, Dr. Pakisoti Saravanamuthu, who seemed to be on the same page with the TNA parliamentarian.
At the end of the day, we must remember in the 2015 presidential election, the Tamil people came out and voted heavily in favour of Maithripala Sirisena and for regime change. So I'm not surprised at all that Mr. Sumandiran made these remarks. I'm sure it may well be his personal remarks. When he makes those remarks, he's also speaking as a Tamil citizen who has had the experience of living under the Rajapaksa regime.
In 2009, under the presidency of current opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa, a 3-decade-long conflict with the terrorist group the LTTE was brought to a military conclusion, following which heavy sums of money was invested in the north to develop previously inaccessible regions with hefty sums spent on infrastructure facilities. With parliamentarian of the Tamil National Alliance M.A. Sumandiran saying that the Tamil community simply wanted then-President Mahinda Rajapaksa out of power and did not vote for his political adversaries out of love, raises reasonable questions as to whether the quest of the TNA is driven by a personal vendetta. The comprehensive win of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, which is a budding party in the local authorities election, depicted that the composition in Parliament does not necessarily reflect the consensus of the majority in the country. Recent turmoil in Parliament also raised questions to the same tune. When the country is striving to move towards reconciliation, comments made by MP Sumandiran singling out a leader who salvaged the country from terrorist brutality for criticism begs the question whether the so-called leaders of the Tamil community are in fact voicing the true sentiments of the Tamil people. In any case, exploiting one's lofty position to push one's own agenda in the name of a community can never end well for anyone. Now, the number of people affected by the inclement weather in the north has risen close to 87,000 people, crippling over 27,000 families. The Disaster Management Centre, however, says the situation in the northern province is easing, although more rains are expected in north central, Sabaragamuwa and Uva provinces. In the meantime, a number of donors who did not forget their fellow brothers and sisters in the north in the hour of need handed over relief aid to the Manusat Derana flood relief program launched by TV Derana today as well. Inclement weather conditions prevailing in Jaffna, Kilinochchi, Mullaitivu and Vavuniya districts of the northern province caused disturbances to the day-to-day lives of thousands of people. Kilinochchi district is considered to be the most affected district, with around 7,000 people reported to be residing in camps. In the meantime, Manusat Derana, as always, is geared to launch a program to provide relief to people in Kilinochchi and Mullaitivu districts. A considerable amount of relief aid started flooding into TV Derana head office today as well by the generous members of the public who were compassionate to the needs of their fellow brothers and sisters in the north.
So as per the Met Department, the rain is expecting more in North Central Province and the Central, Sabaragamuwa, Uva and Kolmata district as well. So people are advised to take all the precautions to minimize the lightning damages, and the situation of the northern province is getting a bit favorable, and the water is receding, and number of evacuated population decreased up to 8,000. And if any queries, they can call 117 call center number. The assessment will be conducted under the supervision of district secretaries as well as the National Disaster Relief Services Center. So after the assessment, other remaining funds, compensations will be provided to that affected community.
Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit, says that a national settlement regarding the reconciliation process in Sri Lanka will never be achieved if only politicians are left to find solutions for the issue. The Archbishop of Colombo highlighted the importance of genuine inclusion of all relevant parties to expedite the reconciliation process. Speaking to Indiviri Amuatha during our special Christmas program, A Message of Hope, the Cardinal went on to emphasize that a solution imposed by force will never be successful.
We have just got out of a 30-year conflict between people in our country, and that question is also not completely resolved. So that's an issue that will have to be settled before long.
What is your formula per se for our reconciliation going forward? How do we urgently address this issue?
We don't have a magical formula for this. Nobody should think that they have this formula. It needs a thorough study, a careful study, and also a careful acceptance by all parties concerned that a solution has to be found. Because if it is an imposed solution by one party or another group, an imposed solution will never work. It will only create more tension. So, on this issue of peace in Sri Lanka, all communities will have to work together. I don't know how that is going to happen, but there must be sincerity. Sincerity to accept that all communities have their dignity, have their rights, have their own identity, and all of that has to be respected. And in a constitutional or a peace package or whatever you call it, settlement, we will have to consider all these factors, and all of us will have to sit together and solve this problem. If it is just left to the politicians, that will never succeed, because politics, as you know, is a divisive thing, and politicians always shift from side to side, and then opinions may vary, and they may consider their own self-interests in these matters, and therefore a truly national settlement will not be possible. An imposition by force, a solution that is an imposition by force, will also never work. As you know, in 1987, the Indian government intervened and imposed a solution on us. But that didn't work. The communities never agreed on it. Therefore, the conflict went on dragging and it became even worse. So imposed solutions from outside, whether it is from another country or a group of countries or an imposed solution from a political party or a group of political parties, will not solve the problem. The problem can be solved only by a frank and fraternal discussion with all the elements of this country coming together and having an interest in finding a solution to this problem, which is workable, also not something that is purely theoretical, but something that is workable, practical, acceptable to everybody.
Now, Minister of Public Administration and Disaster Management Ranjith Madhumabandara says that as for investigations conducted so far, there does not seem to be an assassination plot of President Maithripala Sirisena. The minister made the remark in Kandy when he called on the chief prelates of Malwatta and Asgiri chapters today. Once in Kandy, ministers Ranjith Madhumabandara and Talatatu Korala first met with chief prelate of the Asgiri chapter, Most Venerable Warakagoda Sri Jnanaratana Thera at the Asgiri temple today. I spoke with the President regarding the Ministry of Law and Order, which was previously under my purview. He said the ministry must be under his purview until investigations regarding the plot to assassinate him are concluded. The ministers later met with Chief Prelate of the Malwatta chapter, Most Venerable Tibbatuave Sri Sumangala Thera. We won't consider whether it's the UNP, SLFP or the JVP. You must work for the betterment of the country. The Cardinal himself said that this is a Buddhist and a Sinhala country, and yet the cricket star Muttaya Muralidharan is Tamil.
Laws have been passed following amendments to the Judicature Act to establish 3 special courts consisting of 3-member benches. But there is a problem of not having enough space within the half-stove court complex. We have even appointed judges for the 2nd special court.
As per the Constitution, there can only be 30 cabinet ministers, but we can increase the number if there are several more parties on the governing side. But then no one needs to raise any objections here because with more ministers, more work can be done.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, oil prices somewhat recovered today as it reached $51 a barrel. US crude was also up by 68 cents. Meanwhile, Kazakhstan says that it expects participants in a pact to curb global oil output to stabilize prices in the first quarter of next year. Oil rose to $51 a barrel today on perceptions that a price slide to 2017 lows prompted by economic worries had been overdone amid an OPEC-led effort to tighten supply. Crude has been caught up in wider financial market weakness as the US government shut down, higher US interest rates and the US-China trade dispute unnerved investors and exacerbated worries over global growth. Brent crude, the global benchmark, was up 70 cents at $51.17. It earlier fell to $49.93, the lowest since July 2017, and posted a 6.2% slide in the previous session. US crude was up 68 cents at $43.21. Concerned that a new glut could form, OPEC and its allies, including Russia, decided earlier this month to return to a policy of cutting production in 2019, unwinding a decision taken in June of 2018 to pump more oil. The Producers Alliance, known as OPEC Plus, plans to lower output by 1.2 million barrels per day, of which OPEC's share is 800,000 barrels per day next year, and some ministers have even suggested taking further action. Kazakhstan, meanwhile, expects the participants in a pact to curb global oil output to sizable prices in the first quarter of 2019 and make a joint statement next month in order to support the market. Kazakhstan plans to reduce its own output to 89.5 million tonnes next year from 90.3 million tonnes this year, due in part to planned maintenance shutdowns at its 3 largest oil fields. Now then, the Sri Lankan rupee today depreciated further against the US dollar as the selling price per $1 reached 183 rupees and 17 cents. In this backdrop, a Sri Lankan economist predicts next year to be more difficult for the country given the prevailing global economic turmoil.
The Sri Lankan rupee has depreciated against the US dollar by 18.5% during the year up to date, reflecting a broad-based strengthening of the US dollar globally, outflows from the government securities market and demand for import expenditure in the foreign exchange market. We contacted Dr. Indrajit Ponsu to find out reasons for the continuous depreciation of the local currency.
Now, the reasons underlying from an immediate perspective is that there's an outflow of currency by the foreigners dumping Sri Lankan government bonds. The last week, it was around $3.7 million worth, and the previous week, it's about 27 million. And overall, if you take October to December, it's almost 435 million. But with regard to the inflows, we are getting very weak. Remittances have been down, as the statistics say, about 1%, which is substantial. Then the trade deficit has widened, especially the textiles and garments have not been doing well. And imports have been somewhat subdued, with investment, which is very vital for economic growth, has been down. Investment imports have been down. In the longer term perspective, when you have an economic growth going to be quite weak this year, and inflation rising, are a kind of a back cocktail for the exchange rate, which is already very weak. Given those scenarios, and given that the next year is going to be even harder with global turmoil taking shape, we might have much harder life in the weeks ahead. The scenarios are such that the situation may escalate further.
Meanwhile, speaking at a forum recently, Senior Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, elaborated as to why the rupee depreciation can't be considered as a pressing news item.
So when people complain, currency is depreciating at a historical high, you have to understand the reason. The reason is that we have been running large current account deficits and large fiscal deficits. So interest rates and exchange rate is an outcome of those policies. Unless country earns more foreign exchange than what we earn, currency will anyway depreciate or medium to long term.
However, it's not only the Sri Lankan rupee that has been affected at the moment. Other Asian currencies too were little shaken today as they approached the year end with existing global growth risks and political uncertainty. Many of the regional currencies hugged tight ranges, reflecting a combination of low year-end volumes and reluctance to make big bets in the face of deepening gloom over the global growth, trade and investment.
And now to bring you a market update, the all-share price index ended 0.09% weaker at 6,019.62 today, with a turnover of 670.9 million rupees, below this year's daily average of 840 million rupees. Foreigners were net buyers of 344.7 rupees of stocks, million rupees that is, of stocks today, and according to central bank data, the bond market saw outflows of about 56.7 billion rupees between October 25th and the 19th of December. With that, let's now cross over to Dimantha Matthew from First Capital Holdings for a detailed report.
In the bond market, we saw market yields remaining almost unchanged, but had large volumes trading with lots of foreign selling pressure, which was mostly offset by local buying interest. In the equity market, of course, the market ended in the red, reverting back to the negative sentiment, mainly dragged down by the big caps, John Case and LOLC. 94% of turnover was derived from crossings in Melster Corp and Selingco Insurance. A net foreign inflow was recorded after a lapse of 7 days, and the largest net foreign inflow for the month was recorded of around 330 million rupees.
Time to look at news from around the world. Indonesia is looking into the prospect of building a new tsunami warning system prompted by the massive waves which gutted coastal regions in the islands of Java and Sumatra on Saturday. During the tragedy, which claimed the lives of at least 429 people, it transpired that the existing warning system is only designed to pick up earthquakes. Scientists now believe Sunday's, or more like Saturday's, killer waves were not caused by a quake. Indonesia says it will build a new warning system capable of detecting tsunamis caused by undersea landslides days after giant waves triggered by a volcano killed at least 429 people. A government agency has said that the installation of the new structure of buoys would start next year. It is thought that activity by the Anak Krakatau volcano set off undersea landslides causing Saturday's tsunami. Officials say some 150 people are still missing and 16,000 are displaced. Rescue workers, helped by heavy lifting equipment, are going from village to village, sifting through the debris, looking for survivors in badly hit areas on the islands of Sumatra and Java. The new mechanism would work by detecting the size of waves. The existing technology failed to predict the tsunami that devastated coastal towns around the Sunda Strait between the islands of Sumatra and Java. The system has been set up to monitor earthquakes but not undersea landslides and volcanic eruptions, which can also generate deadly waves. Due to lack of funds, vandalism to buoys and technical faults, there have been no operational tsunami warning buoys since 2012. But experts say that even if there had been buoys near the volcano, the warning time could have been minimal given how close Anak Krakatau is to the shoreline. Coastal residents near the volcano have been warned to keep away from beaches amid fears continued volcanic eruptions of Anak Krakatau could trigger a new tsunami. Japan says it is to restart commercial whaling in July in a move that is likely to draw international condemnation. It said it would withdraw from the International Whaling Commission, the body tasked with whale conservation. Commercial whaling was banned by the IWC in 1986 after some species were driven to almost extinction. Japan is set to withdraw from the International Whaling Commission and resume commercial whaling from July. The country made the announcement today, abandoning a decades-long campaign to persuade the Commission to allow it to hunt whales commercially. Japan, an IWC member since 1951, say eating whales is part of the country's culture. For many years, Japan has hunted whales for what it calls scientific research and to sell the meat, a program widely criticized by conservationists. Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said Japan's commercial whaling will be limited to its own territorial waters and its exclusive economic zone. Suga added that the catch limits will be calculated in accordance with methods adopted by the International Whaling Commission. Japan's decision followed the IWC's latest rejection of its bid to resume commercial whaling at a September meeting, which Suga said showed it was impossible to bridge the gap between the whaling advocates and anti-whaling members. And that's it from all of us here at First and Nine. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.